They said a warship had no place for love, and maybe they were right. But when his eyes found mine across the engine room, filled with fire and steel, I knew the rules didn't stand a chance. Captain Nathaniel Hayes was the kind of man who could silence an entire deck with a single glance. His reputation stretched across the fleet, unyielding, sharp as steel, never bending to weakness. And yet, when he leaned close to check my work, his voice softened like he was afraid to break me. No one else got that version of him. Only me. I wasn't supposed to notice. I wasn't supposed to want him. But God, I did. The first time we met, I was elbow deep in the ship's main engine, cursing under my breath because a valve refused to loosen. My uniform was streaked with grease, sweat dripping down my temple, when suddenly a shadow fell across me. "You planning on wrestling that bolt all night, petty officer?" His voice was dry, cutting, the kind of tone meant to put a man back in his place. I jerked my head. Yupan, there he was. Hayes, tall, precise, eyes the color of storm clouds before a hurricane. For a moment I forgot to breathe. "It stuck," I stammered, which only made him raise an eyebrow like I had personally offended naval protocol. Then, to my surprise, he crouched beside me. His hand brushed mine as he took the wrench, and instead of the sting of his authority, there was something startlingly human in that brief touch. He tightened the grip, gave the valve a sharp twist, and it finally gave way. "There," he said, voice lower, calmer, almost kind. "Sometimes force isn't the answer. You've got to feel the pressure. Listen to the metal." I should have just thanked him and looked away, but I didn't. Our eyes met, and in that second, something charged and dangerous sparked between us. From that day forward, every encounter became a battlefield of restraint. Days on the USS Sentinel blurred into nights. Orders barked across the deck, drills that pushed every sailor to their breaking point, the roar of engines beneath our feet. Hayes was everywhere, commanding, watching, demanding perfection. He tore through men with his discipline, but with me. He paused. Once, during an inspection, he caught a smudge of oil on my cheek. I froze as his thumb brushed it away. The gesture lasted no more than a second, but it set my chest ablaze. "You need to be more careful," he murmured, eyes lingering just a beat too long. Careful? I was already drowning in danger. Not from the missions, but from the way his gaze stripped me bare. But love, if I dared call it, that was not a luxury on a ship like this. Rumors killed faster than bullets. To fall for him meant risking my career, his reputation, everything we had both bled for. So I tried to push him away. One night, after a grueling 14-hour shift in the engine room, I found him waiting by the stairwell. His posture was rigid, but his eyes softened the second he saw me. "You're burning yourself out," he said. I forced a laugh. "Comes with the job." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. "You can't keep carrying the weight alone. Let me—" "No," the word cracked sharper than I intended. His jaw tightened, wounded but unreadable. "You're my captain. That's all you'll ever be." I said it to protect us both, but even as the words left my mouth, my heart shattered. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he whispered, "You don't believe that, and neither do I." Before I could stop myself, my hand reached for his. The contact was fleeting, a ghost of touch, but it was enough. Enough to tell me I was already too far gone. The storm came weeks later. A surprise maneuver during a night patrol threw the entire fleet into chaos. The Sentinel shook with the force of enemy fire, alarms wailing, men shouting. In the heart of the engine room, I worked like a man possessed, patching, welding, holding the ship together with nothing but sheer will. Through the haze of smoke, Hayes appeared, uniform stained, eyes burning with a mix of command and fear. "We're losing power. Can you hold her?" My hands trembled over the controls. "I'll try." "No," he barked, grabbing my shoulders, shaking me just enough to cut through the panic. "You'll succeed. I trust you." It was the first time he'd ever said it. Trust. Something inside me locked into place. My fear burned away, replaced with raw determination. I worked, and he stayed by my side, shouting orders, steadying me when my knees buckled. For hours we fought together, captain and engineer, until finally the engines roared back to life and the Sentinel surged forward, saved from the jaws of destruction. When the smoke cleared and silence fell, I turned to find him still there. His chest rose and fell with exhaustion, but his hand found mine, gripping tight like he was afraid to let go. In that moment, I didn't see the captain. I saw the man, the one who had always been gentle with me, even when the world demanded he be anything but. And for the first time, I let myself hope. The Sentinel limped back to port under the bruised dawn, scarred but unbroken. Sailors cheered, exhausted yet alive, and for once Hayes allowed them that release. But beneath his commanding exterior, I caught the truth in his Aisa flicker of gratitude, not just for the ship, but for me. That night, while the crew celebrated on shore, I slipped away to the quiet of the docks. The sea stretched endless and black, waves lapping gently against the hull. I thought I was alone until I heard the familiar weight of boots behind me. "You always disappear when the noise gets too much," Hayes said, his voice low, almost tender. I turned. He looked different under the pale glow of the harbor lights, less a captain, more a man, tired but alive, human. "You found me," I whispered. "Always," he answered. The word lodged in my chest like a promise I wasn't sure I deserved. We stood in silence, the air charged between us. I should have walked away. Instead, I asked the question that had been clawing at me since the engines roared back to life. "Why me?" My voice cracked. "Out of everyone, the captain. You could have kept your distance. You should have." His gaze locked on mine, sharp and unwavering. "Because you're the only one who makes me feel like Nathaniel, not Captain Hayes. You see me." The truth hit harder than any wave. His walls weren't built of steel or command, they were built to survive. And somehow I had been the one to slip through. I shook my head, fear rising. "If anyone finds out, then let them." He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine. "We've risked our lives in storms and fire. Loving you is the only risk I want to take." My breath caught. Every rule, every regulation screamed against it. But as his fingers threaded with mine, I knew there was no going back. I leaned in before I could lose my nerve. His lips met mine, tentative at first, then desperate, like years of restraint unraveling in a single heartbeat. The world fell away. The fleet, the duty, the fear. It was just him and me, two men who had fought too long to deny what was always there. When we broke apart, his forehead pressed to mine. He whispered, "You're mine, and I'll never let you stand alone again." Of course, life didn't magically soften after that night. We returned to duty, to secrecy, to the constant balancing act between devotion and survival. The crew saw nothing, though sometimes I caught knowing glances, perhaps suspicion, perhaps only imagination. But in stolen moments, behind closed doors or in the quiet hum of the engine room, he was mine and I was his. A hand brushing against mine while passing orders. A soft word no one else would ever hear. Nights where silence said everything. It wasn't easy. There were days when the weight of hiding nearly broke me. Days when I thought about what it would mean to be discovered, to lose everything. But every time doubt clawed at me, he would remind me with one look, steady, unwavering, that I wasn't alone. The breaking point came 6 months later. Another mission, another storm at sea. The Sentinel rattled beneath us, and I thought we wouldn't make it back. When the danger passed, when the ocean finally calmed, Hayes found me below deck, my hands still shaking from the fight to keep the engines alive. "You can't keep doing this to yourself," he said, his voice rough with worry. "Doing what?" I asked, though I knew. "Bearing it all alone. Pretending what we are doesn't matter." He cupped my face then, his thumb brushing against the scar I'd picked up weeks before. "I can't lose you. Not to battle, not to silence. I need you." It was the first time he'd said it out loud. Not an order, not a plea, just truth. And it shattered the last wall between us. From then on, we stopped pretending. We didn't announce it. We didn't flaunt it. But we stopped living like shadows. Our love became something we carried openly in quiet loyalty, in shared strength, in a defiance that no storm or war could tear apart. Years later, when our time at sea finally ended, I stood beside him on the docks once more. The Sentinel rested in the harbor, no longer ours to command, but the memories carved into her steel would never fade. Nathaniel no longer Captain Hayes, just Nathaniel slipped his arm around my waist. The sun dipped low, casting fire across the waves. "Do you regret it?" I asked softly, the question that had haunted me for so long. He turned to me, his eyes steady as always. "Not for a second. Loving you was the only command I ever broke and the only one worth it." I smiled, leaning into him, the weight of years and battles finally giving way to peace. For so long, we had been captain and engineer, chained by duty, bound by silence. Now, at last, we were simply two men free, whole, and finally home. And in that moment, as the sea whispered against the shore, I knew the truth. Love had always been the strongest ship we'd ever built. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.